Hi, welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. Today I'm chatting with Michelle, a loving mama empowerment speaker, author, and coach who believes in the transformative power of women's circles. With a background in education and a deep passion for connecting mamas, she wholeheartedly supports mothers in igniting their passions through grace and community. Let's dive in and hear from Michelle. Hello. Today I am here with Michelle. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm excited to be here. I'm very good. Thanks for having me, Chelsea.
I'm so excited to have you here. I have read about you a little bit, but I always like to ask my guests and give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. Two-part question, though, straight out the gate. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about who you were before you became a parent.
Ooh. Well, I was excited before a parent. No, I'm just kidding. Well, right now, I am a mom of three. I have an almost 13-year-old who is trying my patience every day.
I can imagine.
A 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the two youngest are girls, and I'm an older boy. And so enjoying that, though, I really do admit part of my story is I just got lost in the midst of motherhood and just felt like I was living in this fog of it all. And I really do feel after going down the personal journey route and kind of figuring this all out that I am able to enjoy more of my day and be more present with them. And so despite yesterday being at a parent-teacher conference with my almost 13-year-old who left me wanting to punch him out, I did not.
Oh!
I did not. I reserved it, and we had a whole conversation about reaction versus response and how even during him trying me in front of his teacher, I responded rather than reacted, and that is our main goal in life is just stuff's going to happen around us, but the only thing we have control over is how we respond to it. And all we were trying to do for him was give him tools to be more responsive rather than reactive. And that is very trying as they are turning into teenagers. But so that's the gist of me being a mom. But before being a mom, I was a teacher. I taught for 8 years. I taught high school for 8 years. And actually, when we moved here, 2 years after moving from California, Wisconsin, I decided to stay at home with the kids. And so I've been staying at home with them and then went down this entrepreneurial route because I did not want to go back to the classroom. I tried it for one semester when they were little and realized that my paycheck was about the price of daycare.
Yeah.
And decided we didn't need to do that at that moment. And then as they're all back in school now, it's me figuring out what is my genius and what do I want to do with that. And before kids, though, I will admit that my husband and I did travel around the world for 13 months.
Wow.
And we got married along the way. So got married 4 months in. And even before we had already had the trip planned, that I said to him, so are we getting married or are we not? And ended up pretty much putting an ultimatum on the table saying, like, we either get married or I'm not going on this trip.
Oh my God.
Hence the wedding was planned 4 months in. He's like, well, I planned to propose along the way and we could have a wedding when we got back. I'm like, with what money? Let's be honest.
Where did you get married?
We got married in Australia.
Oh, that's awesome.
In on the Gold Coast in the Q1 Tower. The tallest residential, I don't know if it is still the tallest residential, but at the time it was the tallest residential tower in the world.
But that's so cool. So you got married in Australia, and then you just kept traveling.
We had like an 8-long honeymoon, and we did not kill each other.
That's important. Yeah. Yeah. In a marriage, you kind of want to avoid that.
Traveling with someone for a year, 24 hours straight, you can learn a thing or two. You can survive that. I think we're okay.
Yeah, sounds like it. You've made it this far.
Yes, almost 15 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Were kids sort of always on your life plan?
For me, not as much as my husband's always wanted kids. And so for me, it was, my mom always kind of said she never wanted kids, but my dad did. And I think I kind of always had that in my head and I wasn't sure what I wanted. But when I met him, it was just kind of a natural, it will happen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I have to be a mom kind of plan for me.
Yeah. Were you teaching at the time that you met your husband?
Ironically, I actually went to New York University and got my teaching credential over there. And when I moved back to California, I was struggling to get a teaching job. And so I met him in May and August. I had my first teaching job.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I was also in education. I was a special educator, and I was in that field for 10 years, and I don't know if I'll ever go back in the classroom. So
I think there's a lot of us out there, and that's why my sympathy, and when I have the parent teacher conference or anything, I'm like, let's go in there and work through it. They have a tough job.
oh my
There's a
God,
lot
yes.
of behind the scenes stuff there, and I'm just like, whatever I can do to support that the best way I can is where I'm at. And
Yeah.
they need more support and just open communication. And honestly, we all just want the best for the kids.
I completely agree. I think, I mean, this could be a podcast in and of itself, and there are lots of them out there, but I feel like teachers, the problem is not with the teachers, it's with the administrations. The teachers are killing themselves trying to do everything that they can for our kids, but the administrations are bananas.
I've seen a lot of good teachers leave because of that. Really
Yeah.
good teachers who are no longer teaching. I mean, my reason for leaving also was kids, but then not wanting to go back is part of all the politics and stuff of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a tangent, but it was another connection.
We have mom brains. We can go on tangents.
Oh my God. Yeah, my train derails about every 30 to 45 seconds, so bear with me.
It's okay. I'll help center to you because I've got my days slowly back as they're in school, which was another story because I did homeschool for during COVID as well. Thought we'd continue with that. So now with them back in school, it's completely different.
Yeah, what was that experience like? We've had a couple of moms that went the homeschool route.
Well, for me, we actually the summer before they actually offered like virtual summer school that year before after March and into that summer, and I did it more to see what it was going to be like because at the time both my father and my brother-in-law had cancer, and so not knowing much about COVID or anything, that was just like we weren't going to do in person because we had no idea what. There's just so many unknowns at the time, and we didn't want to add to anything. So we'd already decided it was either going to be virtual. And then when I did that virtual homeschooling, I was like, oh my God, I just feel like a substitute teacher, which I hated so much in my life. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take charge of this and do what I can do and control. And I brought them home for the year and went the homeschooling route, did the homeschooling groups. We probably had more in-person groups than most did because we found a group that we still met with.
A bubble. You made a bubble.
We made our own little homeschooling bubble, and it wasn't quite the schedule of what my husband thought it should look like, and so it just caused a lot of friction in terms of what. And then, ironically, my son, who struggles socially, wanted to go back. My daughter, who's my social butterfly, was happy with the way we were doing things, and my youngest had never been to school yet at that point. She would have been 4K that year. We would have finally got used to our 4K in the district because they didn't have 4K for my other two. That was the year they had 4K. But it was just, when it came down to it, then the decision was put in my hands, but I decided there was too much rest. I mean, people not wanting it, that I just chose to go forward with it. And then I jumped into trying to create this business instead. But then trying to support them as much. And I think for me, some of the stuff that we were doing homeschooling and thinking outside the box, I was afraid that we weren't going to do anymore once I go back to school. But I've been still offering it in terms of with my son. Both my son and my daughter have spoken on summits now. They're actually both, there is opportunities to be part of compilation books. So they're published with me, each of them in a separate book. Wow. So like doing those things that I thought I could only do through homeschooling, trying to like make a rhythm between home, trying to do some of those outside the box thinking versus school and rectifying that with what I was doing. So I am happy with the way those things are going.
Nice. That's awesome. You kind of found a good balance.
Yeah, working. And again, though, I've been trying to get away from the word balance.
Oh, tell me about that.
Because when you think about the word balance, you think about two opposing objects on one side, and there's this pressure on both sides. So I love the idea of rhythm or dance because we're going through the motion of it, and there's no pressure involved. It's just finding the right move to go forward. But when we always like balance, it has to be equal. There's no equality in any of this. It's more what's working right now and how do I flow and make this. I like the idea, the analogy of the glass balls versus the rubber balls. Like you're always juggling balls, and some of them are glass and some of them are rubber. And so you're always trying to the glass ones, you're putting more of a rhythm or dance or more on them to make sure that they don't fall. but then they'll merge to being a rubber ball and something else will change. Whether it's like your relationship with one kid is a glass ball right now, but the next thing you know, it's the opposite with the other kid, right? That they're switching. But when we just keep using that word balance, it just feels like this heavy load, this pressure. And so I just love the idea of just a dance, like we're in this dance together.
Yeah, I like that.
How do we just move around with each other as best we can and enjoy it?
I like that. That never even really occurred to me. And then as soon as you said it, it made perfect sense to me. Like I pictured the scale.
Yeah, you see the scale, and there's just this pressure feeling when you use that word, or at least for me. And so, but the more I use it, I have other people recognizing with it, just because you feel this pressure, and it's like we're always like trying to make it equal.
Yeah.
It's not equal. It's just some things deserve more attention at time than other things, and it's just finding that right dance to do it, rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I was a dancer all growing up, so there we go.
And I never was. I always wanted to, but I feel like that rhythm of it is so much more like just calming to work through your day than to try to make it even.
Ugh, like it. I love when I learn so much from meeting all of you wonderful people that I get to chat with. And there's another one that I get to add to my toolbox. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so guiding my train back to the track. Let's go back to I know. Let's go back to sort of your journey initially into parenthood. What was that like when you and your partner finally decided, like, okay, I think we're ready. I think it's time to start.
Well, leading back to is we got home from travel around the world. Mm. And he was supposed to have the job. He was supposed to get his job back. Well, needless to say, his mom was actually a VP at the time of that company, and she was fired. And there was a big upheaval with everything going on. And
oh my God,
we none of this going in. She was hiding from us because she didn't want us to stress or worry about it. So as we come back from the trip, I end up then as a teacher get an opportunity to take a 6th period. So I take that. He's out of work, but somehow in the midst of that, we still get pregnant. We're actually not necessarily trying.
Yeah, it just kind of happened.
And we got, so I guess I found in April or May, but by July, he had a new job. But it was almost a full year that he was out of work when we came back. So or 10 months, I guess to say. And so it was a little stressor. I think he felt the pressure of like new life, and like at the time we were living in California, very expensive.
Yeah.
In California. But it ended up all then just working out. And then though the birth with him was one of my more traumatic ones, which probably explains a lot about my 13-year-old. But it was funny because for some reason, so since I was teaching somewhere 45 minutes away from home. I was living in Orange County, but teaching in Riverside. So it's about a 45-minute drive. And so my doctor was out in Riverside, since it was just on the way home, to always stop at the doctor's office that often. Especially with him, I was always doing the NST tests twice a week and stuff. And so it was more of a strenuous pregnancy, even though doing the yoga, doing everything, and I actually felt really good. I worked up to the last minute. I mean, he was born Christmas Eve. I stayed till the end of the semester. December 17th was our last day. I made it all the way to the end. But I remember having my doctor's appointment and asking my mother-in-law if she wants to go, and she at the time wasn't living she was living somewhere else, but she'd come back to California, and so her and her husband weren't living together from her job. And so she was back in town, but like I had all the stuff around the house, get ready for Christmas and all this stuff. And she was just like, oh, I don't know if I can go with you to the appointment. And for me, I knew my husband hadn't put the bag in the car or anything. I put everything in the car by myself, dragged it down the stairs because I just had a feeling I wasn't coming home.
Yeah.
And she's like, if you would have told me that, I would have come. I'm like, what am I supposed to say? So I get there, and they're just, oh, like, you seem really stressed. We're going to send you over to labor and delivery. And I'm just sitting there by myself. And eventually my husband, his father, he was still working in the area over there. And so my father-in-law brought him over eventually. And I didn't repack his stuff because I didn't know he had finished packing his stuff. I had just grabbed the stuff. And so he didn't have any of it. Like his parents had to bring him more stuff eventually. But yeah, I never left.
You went in for that appointment and did not come back.
The heartbeat was just high, and like they were worried about it, and they sent me over. And the next thing I know, I wanted to do a natural birth, and they gave me Pitocin, and I had no idea with that epidural what the Pitocin would do. And the anesthesiologist was gone for 2 hours while I was on Pitocin, and I had no idea what was happening. And the nurse wouldn't even come in because she was afraid of all the screaming I was making.
Oh my gosh. Did they talk? So they didn't talk to you about what the Pitocin was going to do? They just...
Not that I remember. But again, by that point, I was like out of it. And my husband I remember him recommending me getting the epidural. And then I was kind of thinking about it. And then I finally said yes. But by the time I said yes, they could... I don't know if he was out to dinner or with another patient. I don't know yet. It was 2 hours till the anesthesiologist came. So I just remember being in a lot. And then they found meconium when they had to break my water, and they found meconium. So then everything I still did a natural delivery, but everything just became like rushing him to the NICU and not seeing him or any of that. And I don't remember much. All I remember is 4 a.m. that they're trying to, because it was around Christmas Eve, that they're trying to give me mushed up green beans and like a weird like full meal at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, this is like dinner. Like, it's 4 a.m. in the morning. Like, can I just have a piece of fruit or something small? And my husband was over there in the NICU most of the time. And so I was just kind of completely out of it by myself, not really sure what's going on. So it's finally the next morning that I did see him. And then, I mean, it was fun. He ended up only being in there for 3 days. He was like the biggest one. They almost didn't let him leave because he lost his pound. Like, he did everything normal, but he had to gain weight before he could leave. And then he was set up on their schedule. Like, he's a schedule-oriented kid now. And so I had no idea about how to nurse or what. And so he got onto that schedule, and that's kind of like went home with that schedule. Like, let's wake you up and feed you. And so that's kind of how it went. But then 3 weeks after he was born, I thought I was just having uterus pains or something. And then my husband was kind of worried, but he didn't really quite say what he thought it was going to be as I was describing my pain stuff. And then I was like, oh, I'll just wait till the morning and go to the clinic or whatever. So we did that. And he's like, I don't know why you waited. Like, we should have taken you in. We get to the clinic to find out. Yeah, I have an appendicitis.
Oh my God. How many days after you had him?
3 weeks. It was
3 weeks. Oh my God.
So 3 weeks after I had an appendicitis. And they found an umbilical hernia at the same time that they tried to stitch up. But they couldn't do mesh, obviously, or anything, because then there'd be infection. So that was January. So then by May, I had a second surgery for the umbilical hernia.
Oh my God.
And each of these, there was a 6-week period where I couldn't really pick him up because he was just, especially by the second one, because he was getting so big.
Yeah.
He was by that point, he was like 17, 18 pounds. I wasn't allowed to lift him. So I had to have people coming to help me and like with nursing and everything. And that was, I think, stepping into motherhood with that, who I don't like asking for help, was really hard because I had to rely a lot on others because I literally couldn't pick them up.
Right.
And so that was a big jump start for me, and like, how do you even ask for help and doing that? But then I had friends who made schedules and stuff, and like my second surgery ended up being towards the summer, so then some of them one could come down for a day or whatever and help me and things like that. So it ended up working out, but it was really a trying time to be in that midst of it all. And then I got to ask for help, and it's the second time because it was first. And I even remember calling my cousin, like wanting her to take Liam, that before the appendicitis, but I didn't tell her. I was like in so much pain or what
this was about. I was like,
are you busy? Like, she's like, oh no, I'm doing this and this. I'm like, oh, okay, that's no problem. And she got so mad at me because I didn't like tell her the full story because I was like, I don't want to bother anybody. And she's like, if I would have known, I would have come taken him.
Isn't that crazy though? So for you, it was compounded by all of these medical things, but like, even as new parents, there's this like guilt thing on us all the time. Like, we're not supposed to ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, we're supposed to be able to do this. I'm mom. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. But for you, you had all of this other stuff compounded on top of it. And you're still like, no. I don't need any help.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So a couple of things strike me, and some things I'm curious about. So when was he born? You said that you didn't see him until the next morning.
He was born around I want to say 4 a.m., but it was somewhere in that time frame of Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And I didn't see him till 11 the next morning.
On Christmas Day?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that because you were going through something or because he was in the NICU and you couldn't go see him?
A little bit of both. I think I passed out, but I knew when I woke up I wasn't allowed to see him yet, and so I think it was like the hours by the time I had plans, so that was the first time I could see him.
Okay. And then of course you have to have these surgeries and you literally like cannot pick up your own son and you can't like do any of these things. Do you feel like that impacted your ability to kind of form an early relationship with him?
Not really, only because of all of that, I ended up staying home with him for 7 months, which I don't think I would have done had that not happened. But it was, so I was home. Yeah, so I ended up taking off an entire semester from teaching. So I never went back. I was about to go back in May, but then when that second surgery happened, that just pushed it off as well. And so I was just home with him a lot more than I had ever expected. So I think for him, it was really hard when he finally had to go to daycare.
Yeah, I can imagine that because he was used to being with you all the time.
Yeah.
It sounds like you had a pretty good support network, though.
In the end, yeah. Once I finally let people help.
Okay.
But I think that's my problem. I mean, because we were still living in California, and I had a lot of friends at that point. So yeah, and his parents were there at that time. So it did help, and my parents were around as well.
So you had a bunch of friends, you had a good support network. How was your partner through all of this? What was his experience of this like?
Well, I have to be honest, is that I never had like really any experience with kids beforehand.
Okay.
I never dealt with babies. Like I just wasn't my thing. Never babysat, or I mean older kids, but never babies or anything. He, however, has had cousins and all kinds of stuff. So he was actually more hands-on than I was.
Oh, really?
Like, I did not even want to give him a bath. I was afraid to give him a bath. So he was the one giving him the baths. And my son, for the longest time, like up to like 15 months, would not take table food. Like, it was baby food. So my husband would be the one making these pureed cubes.
Oh, my gosh.
Making the spinach and doing all this stuff that I was like,
You can do this.
And he would be there like late at night grinding up all this spinach so Liam would have cubes for daycare.
Oh my god.
Because he would not take the other stuff, and we just started down this path of like of making puree cubes and stuff. And I mean, I would help with some of it, but I'd have to say did a lot more of it than I did.
Yeah. Do you feel like, well, so it sort of sounds like it, that it was maybe more of a transition for you to step into that motherhood role than it was for him to step into?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I'm not a baby person. I mean, now that I have experience, if people need help, I will offer it and I will take the baby when needed, but I'm not the one who goes over and goes, oh, let me hold the baby. That's just not me.
Yeah.
If someone says, can you help me? Sure, no problem. And I'll play, I have no problem with it now, but before it's just like, And even, I mean, so for me, it was definitely not, definitely more coming into it. And by the time I had my daughters, it was just old hat, but it was really a lot. Like, I was the guy, I feel like, just like, how do I handle this football here?
And I hate gender norms. I hate them, but I also hate that there's like truth to them too. So when you say like, I took on like the male role, like, it's so frustrating because A, gender is a construct. B, dads get so much crap about like, well, here's mom brain. How do I word this?
The example I was going to think is how dads always say, I'm babysitting.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Yeah, I'm babysitting today. Or it's like when you see a dad at the grocery store with the kids and you're like, oh, what a good dad. And when you see a mom at the grocery store with the kids, you're just like...
My husband would come home because he would take the kids out all the time, and he still does. He would just come home with these stories of all these women like just cooing over him and stuff. I'm like, really? Like, yeah. He has stories relentless. We were downtown Chicago, and he had my son in the backpack carrier, and he used to like carry like my kids like if you look at your arm, he would have them like kind of sprawled across his arm and like just holding them up so I could see everything. And like they were up on his finger and like and so we were downtown Chicago and he's got one in the backpack, one like this. And I'm like, he's such a great dad.
Meanwhile, if it was you, they'd be like, oh, you've got your hands full, Mom.
I did, at a different time, I took Liam before we had my daughter to downtown Chicago by myself, got peed on in the backpack by him, and no one said a word to me.
No, of course not. Of course not. Ugh, it's so frustrating. So your partner was super supportive, it sounds like, and he was taking on a lot of those things. And I'm curious too, like, as your kids got older, did you find that rhythm that you were talking about? Did it become more natural and more comfortable for you?
Yes, I think it has. I mean, it always came to this point where when I was staying at home with them, and then like I would kind of just like put my hands up in the air and he would take them on the weekends. And that kind of like, but that became a frustration point for both of us in terms of like, not me. That was when I felt like I was in the fog and like not sure what I want to do with myself or how to do these things. And like, even like I said with my son, like we are very similar in the way we deal with things and things. So we butt heads a lot. And so I'd almost throw my hands up in the air and say to my husband, well, you deal with me, deal with him. But then as a mom, I was like, I don't want to always have to run to him. And so even this week, my husband was gone for a business trip. I used to all week, and I would used to dread the trips. Like, how do I handle this? How am I going to do this? Now it's like, okay, see ya. And it's been fine more so because I've stepped up and like trying to figure that out and have that deeper relationship with them. But it really came to be once I figured out the things that I want to do and started to move forward, and they became part of it, and finding that actual genuine connection. Because like there's always that superficial, like you're trying to do things with each other, but if you're not enjoying it together, you're not. So for instance, even with the girls, I will try in the mornings, like because Liam leaves before them, that I'll try, what we do is like our 10-minute a day time together and try to do something that they want to do, and trying to create those things that I wasn't doing before. I was so like stuck in all of it and just how do I even get through the day. And that's actually, I think, what I enjoyed about homeschooling so much was I was so afraid of the mornings that I remembered with the kids getting the bus and like just like, oh my God, I throw my hands in the air. I'm like, oh, I just got on the bus. I'm so exhausted.
Yeah.
I have to sit here all day. And once we changed all that, when we got to a routine and we got to them, I mean, now my girls make their own lunch if they need it. There's a schedule up. There's things that like just certain play that I'd never even thought of before. And I think that's what we need is when we come together as moms, it's not judgment. It's just like seeing what works for others and then giving that a try. And so finally got to a point, my mother-in-law, when she's here in the mornings on weekdays, she's like, our house was never like this. It's so calm and quiet. Like, and it didn't used to be that way at all. But it's like they're in charge of their mornings now, and I'm just a support system versus like having to control it all. And it's such a different vibe to it than it was before we homeschooled, and I was just pulling my hair out and like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. And then I still had a little one at home to take care of afterwards. And now it's like figuring out what I want to do and my purpose and getting that and seeing them inspired by that.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you talk about that too, because I'm in this weird limbo with my kids, because one of my kids is just turned 8, so right around the age of your youngest, and then my youngest is 1. So I have one kid who's just barely starting to be more independent, and then I have another who's completely reliant on me. But my oldest is also resisting that independence because the youngest is very dependent on me. So like our morning routine is still pretty chaotic. Trying to get her out to the bus is insane. And I have that feeling. I'm like, oh my God, like, please just get your jobs done. Please. The bus is going to be here. Some mornings I beg her. I'm like, can you just let me drive you to school, please? Please. And she's like, no, I want to ride the bus. I'm like, then do your things. But anyway, it's another tangent. I'm curious to see how that will evolve as she gets older. I think the benefit for your youngest is that she has 2 older siblings that are setting an example. So I'm curious to see how that's going to kind of evolve for me a little bit, but I feel that stress.
Do you use any songs or anything in the morning?
We listen to, she has a chore chart. A chore chart is what we call it, but really it's a routine. It's a visual schedule. Mm-hmm. Special educator. I pulled that out of my toolbox. So she has her visual schedule and she has a time timer, and we have like sections of our morning. So when we're having breakfast, we listen to an audiobook, and it kind of like sets the tone. And then when breakfast is done, we move on to the next thing, and we move on to the next thing. The problem is she is not willing to pick up her pace despite the time timer and despite our schedule. So
what is the time timer exactly?
It's a timer. It's a visual timer, so it'll count down, and you can watch it. It's not digital. It's like an analog timer thing, and it's red, and the red will disappear.
I was curious if you pick songs that she likes, that she knows she has that entire song to finish whatever she's doing.
That's a really good idea.
Because what we do is, like, for Alexa, like, I'll put they'll have a song that takes them out the door. So they have until the song's done to make sure they're out the door. And we have, like, we sing, every morning now we sing It's an Awesome Day by Jack Hartman. So it just kind of sets their tone.
I like Jack Hartman! And
so that song just plays every day, and today we're just bellowing it out today. My older daughter was kind of rolling her eyes a little bit at us, but she sang a couple lines. But so I use those prompts on Alexa, so I don't have to remember myself. So I just program those as alarms on Alexa. And then she knows and then they're out. I don't even remember the last time I said you need to go outside. Half the time they're outside before the song even goes off. My daughter just wants to go outside to play Gaga Ball. But the songs help them know that they have that amount of time, and by the time they need to be wherever they're at. And whatever her songs are.
Yeah, I like that so much because...
We play Luke Bryan for Lily, because she loves Luke Bryan.
Is Lily your youngest's name?
Yeah.
Lily is my oldest's name. Lily is my oldest and Avery is my youngest. But that's so funny. That's a really good idea, and I'm glad that you mentioned it on here, because a lot of other parents could probably benefit from that too, because she's so stressed about time. She takes her time and takes her a million years to do anything, but then when we're getting down to the wire, she gets like physically anxious and worked up. But she loves music, so that I'm going to try that. I am absolutely going to try that, because I think that could really be helpful. Oh my gosh.
Honestly, that's part of the freebie that I offer, is that I have those ideas in the freebie.
No, and this is amazing. We're a storytelling podcast, and we talk about this and we talk about that, but I always love when they take these turns that I'm not anticipating, and I'm learning things.
Well, I mean, honestly, isn't it just... I feel like all of this is about just making moms know we're not alone.
Yes.
And tools that we can do this, but tools to just be able to get our voices out there and realize and listen to other moms saying that I've been through that too.
Yeah. Well, and you talked a little bit about the fog. Can you explain what the fog means to you? For me, it was that I just kept feeling like I love my family. I want to be so grateful for what I have, but like I would find myself just for me, I was playing a lot of Candy Crush, literally, like a lot. And I felt like I was just kind of like, oh, I'll just sit down for a minute. Next thing I know, because it was, for me, the kids were starting to become a little bit independent. So you get those pockets of time. Yeah. But all of a sudden they start coming and you're like, well, what do I do with this time? And then you start to feel listless. And you're like, I don't know what to do with this time. And so then you find, like, for me, it was either TV or Candy Crush or whatever, like, to fill that void. But then, like, that made you feel worse when you, like, all of a sudden look up and like, oh my God, it's been an hour. I'm scrolling on Facebook and it's been an hour. And I'm like, what are they even doing? They're fine. But like, why was I doing this? And just questioning that. And then I would feel like guilty or be stressed about it. And then I would take it on them. And then, it caused more fights. And so for me, it was like, just how am I using my time? And then it would just become, that's why I felt like a fog, because I wasn't sure what I was doing with my time. It's like all of a sudden you have this little moments, but it's like, what do I do with it? Yeah. And that uncertainty is what really led to a lot of the fog feeling, and then a lot of the, like, me being resentful or just like snapping at them when they didn't do anything. It was just the way I was feeling. And so it was me then taking charge. Well, what do I want to do with this time? What am I going to do? And then that's where I went down the entrepreneur route for me. But it was really, for me, like, wanting to help other moms figure that out, because we start to get we were so in survival mode when they're little that, like, but then all of a sudden the load does start to lighten. But then you're like,
I need to stay busy. I need to do these things, and I need to do all this for them. And then you lose yourself, and then you're like feeling guilt, not even guilty, but a little bit resentful. Like you're all of a sudden doing the dishes and you start crying, and you're like, I don't even know why I'm crying, but like, I'm just going to push it back down. And then it happens again. You're like, I want more, but I have my family. This is my happily ever after. I love them. This should be enough, but it's not. And then you start to feel guilty about it and want more. But how do you rectify that with it? And I think the more of us moms speak out and start to show how and what we're doing, again, to find that rhythm in our lives, that by doing the things that I like doing, I'm now more present with them, spending more time with them, doing the silly mornings that I used to be so stressed about. Those types of things. And trying to still do all activities after school, all those things, but having that time. I feel very blessed in terms of like that I'm still, quote unquote, stay at home, not quite necessarily on the plus side of the entrepreneur route, but that my husband's giving me that freedom to figure it out. And I know not everyone's in that position, but at the same time, we do have these pockets of time. And when we connect with others and figure out what are we going to use to feel good about using that time and enjoy what we're doing, that's really the key. And sometimes when we're so, I hate the word busy too, because I feel like we use it as an excuse. And it becomes this word, but that's how I call it the moms, is those moms that just feel so busy. But it's how do we slow down enough to figure out what we do want? And I really, that's where I love the concept of the women's circle. And I've been learning a lot more about that and working with all these circle leaders. And that's how I run my courses through the women's circle. Is we really, when we come together to have these authentic chats, you really open up your own heart to figure out what's inside there, because we've blocked it for so long. And so that's really what it comes down to, is how do I figure out what I want? And I've got all this pressure. I've got all this time. I have all these responsibilities for all the kids, but there still is a way to do it. And so the way is through community and figuring that out and deciding that that's something you do want. And there are plenty of moms that are discontent with the busyness and doing that. And that's great too. But I'm reaching out to the ones that also like are finding themselves crying or finding themselves feeling guilty, wanting more. But there is possibility to get a new rhythm in your life.
Yeah, I think for a lot of moms and a lot of parents, and I know for me, like exactly what you're talking about with that, when you find those pockets of time, like for me right now, you were talking about Candy Crush. For me, it's bingo. I feel like a 90-year-old, but like I really like bingo. And I'll find myself with a little bit of time and I'll be like, I'm going to play bingo. And then I sit down and but then I'm also like, oh shit, like I should have been folding laundry, or I should have been getting the clothes ready for tomorrow, or like things like that. And so there's that guilt. And then when you're done playing the bingo, you're like, oh, well, my daughter's been watching TV for the last hour because I was playing bingo. And so there's guilt from not doing things that you feel like you should be doing. There's guilt for not spending time with your kids, even though you need time to yourself. But then there's also like, how do you effectively use that time so that you feel fulfilled after and not like empty? Like, because playing bingo and playing Candy Crush isn't really filling a need or filling a hole. It's just passing the time. I'm not going to say I'm going to give up bingo. But
and that's just it. We put the shoulds on ourselves, and it's not that you, and there's nothing wrong with playing the bingo. It's what you feel from it. And so I was like, all of a sudden, like, oh, I should give up TV. I'm like, I never say give up TV. I'm still binge watching like crazy. But my tip to that is, are you sitting down to watch TV because you want to, or because you're feeling time? Like, is there a specific show you want to watch? Then by all means, go watch it, enjoy it. But if you sat down because you had nothing better to do or couldn't think of anything else to do, and you're just going to sit there and flip the channels or find something because you think that's where the disconnect comes in, I think, is it comes down to intention. Mm-hmm. It comes down to what is it behind it that we're doing. Are we trying to fill a void? Because then that's the problem, is if you're just trying to fill a void and fill time, we can do that with anything. Mm-hmm. But at the end of it, you're going to feel worse for having done it. And then the shoulds come in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a phrase that I heard in therapy, and it's like, don't should all over yourself.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Because when we should all over ourselves, that doesn't help either.
Yeah.
But the question then is, do you want to take the time to figure out some of the things you would want to do? So if there's something like, for instance, one of the things I'm trying to take up is guitar. I've always wanted to learn guitar. I haven't, my daughter keeps looking at me and goes, Mom, you should probably just take lessons at this point. But it's looking at the things that that your gut has been telling you or calling you to do. And then you're like, oh, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. But 10 minutes a day on those things are what the fulfilling starts. But sometimes it's hard to get through all the clutter and the chatter in your head to figure that out anymore. That's where the community and the women's circle and that kind of honesty comes in, is to try to get through the chatter of it all, because we have been so disconnected from each other. But once we have a couple of those things, even just 10 minutes a day of playing whatever instrument or dancing or whatever it is that brings you joy, that changes your energy. Because again, we're all energetic beings, and it's more about the energy that we're presenting to people. When I was sitting there playing Candy Crush, it made my energy so, for me personally, just so down that at the end of it, I was now having the fog feeling, and then trying to interact with my family in that type of state, that it was just causing so much friction. And so it was me recognizing that, taking accountability for that, and trying to do something different from it. But if you're enjoying something, there's a difference. For me, I wasn't enjoying it. I was using it as an escape and not even enjoying it. If I had been enjoying it, or felt accomplished for getting to the next level or something from it, but something if you have, that's different. But for me, that was me having to recognize and say, this is not serving me right now. I'm getting nothing from this. Versus watching my show that I'm binge watching because I enjoy it. That's for me different. I'm still going to do that because I do want my find the downtime that serves you in what you do. If you're a reader, reading the book that just stimulates your brain a little bit more, or whatever it is it's more looking at the intent behind it and acknowledging that. And it's not that we need to judge ourselves on it. It's just starting to recognize the things that we want to do in our lives. What is going to bring more enjoyment to ourselves? And sometimes breaking those habits that aren't serving us is really what's going to bring us the joy.
I think another thing that's important about what you're saying too, especially for new parents and first-time parents, it may feel like you're never going to be able to do that again, and you're never going to be able to find those pockets of joy, and because you're in the trenches. You talk about that schedule. You're on a feeding schedule, you're on a sleeping schedule, if you're going back to work, it's so stressful, but it's not forever. You are going to be able to find those pockets of time. And like you're saying, you have to figure out how you want to best use them.
I do want to add on to that in terms of part of the fog as well, is that when you are the new parent and say it's been 3-4 years, so that you've said no to all these things you used to say yes to. When you have those pockets of time, you are now a different person. Mm-hmm. You have changed in a way from all the no's that you've said, good or bad, whatever, but it's just that recognition that it's not I need to do what I used to do. That's where where we're talking about the finding yourself in motherhood, is because something has changed in you. And it's recognizing that, acknowledging it, and now asking a new question to what do I like now? Because you're coming off that survival mode of the feeding schedules and all that, and all of a sudden you're that's, I think, where it gets the scary point, is you're well, I used to do that, so I should do that. Again, the should come back. I used to like to read, so that's something I really should get back to. Well, maybe you don't like to read anymore. And so it's asking new questions, to being curious and opening up that curiosity to what do I like doing now that I have these kids in front of me? I might have new friends because I made mom friends or whatever it is. I don't have to be the old person I was. And it's not that that's good or bad. It's recognizing, what am I at now? What do I want to fill my pockets of time with after I've been through all this? Because at times there are traumatic parts to it, because sleepless nights, things you've said or done, or just things that have come up that you might not have liked who you were. And so now is your chance to ask new questions. And I think that's where it comes in with why I even want to do what I want to do with Connecting Mamas, is because we keep thinking that we need to be something we were, or that we've lost something. It's just, it's new, it's evolution. And so now we need to ask new questions and open up our curiosity to it.
Yeah. So we keep alluding to it, but tell me more about Connecting Mamas, because that is what your passion has led you to.
Yes, my passion has led me to create Connecting Mamas, and it's basically a community for moms to come together. And again, as I've been alluding to the Women's Circle, I run all my courses through the Women's Circle, and so I offer free Women's Circles to get to know it as well. And as I was telling Chelsea before we got on, I am on November 12th launching a podcast called Mama Genius Hub. And
Love
so
it.
It comes off of the idea from Guy Hendricks with getting into our genius zone. And really, again, as everything we've talked about through this podcast is really asking those new questions and that new curiosity to what do I like doing and how do I do more of it? But again, it's so hard to ask those questions, especially in the midst of motherhood, because there's just so much going on. And so the quickest way to do that is through connection and doing it with other people going through what you're going through. And so that's what brought me to create Connecting Mamas. So I do have a freebie for everyone if you just go to connectingmamas.com/gift. It will include how to reclaim your morning and 10 ways to reclaim your morning for you busy moms out there. Just give me that way to, again, it's about the intention. And so it gives you some tips on how to do that, but also goes into creating that morning with your kids as well as the bonus for it. Because the more that we set off our mornings, the more it shapes the way we think and do things differently throughout the day. And even for those moms that are out there with the newborn saying, I don't have time for this, when you wake up in the middle of the night and your baby's screaming, if you just take 2 deep breaths before you run over to them, that changes your state, that changes your energy, that changes your intention for that. And you have 10 seconds to take 2 deep breaths before you go over there. But it's that intent and it's that stop, that pause that we need to do before we go and address. We do need to fill our cups first. Because as I was saying before, with living in the fog, when I wasn't filling my cup, getting done with Candy Crush, I was now irritable. I was now reacting to everything they did rather than responding to it. And so we have to start with changing the way we look at things, but finding more enjoyment in our day. And so that's what Connecting Mamas is all about, is that community to help you figure that out. And the podcast is the Genius Hub because I'm bringing on lots of guests who, for instance, I have one who talks about self-publishing. Because once you know what you want to do, that's not my specialty, but I want to direct you to people who could help you with these types of things too. Let's get more moms out there with their words and their visions. And I really think that that's what's going to make the change in this world, is the more that we change with ourselves and then inspire our kids to make that change as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really cool to see you talk about it so passionately. And it gives me hope, and I hope it gives my listeners hope too, that again, a lot of my listeners are in this place of sort of hopelessness and feeling lost, but knowing that it's not forever and you're going to find your passion again. And like you said before, you're not the same person that you were before. And the things that brought you joy once may not bring you joy now. So connecting with other people, learning about new things, and filling your time with intention, super important. That's what Quiet Connection has been for me through my mental health journey, is that it has become my passion and has helped me come out of the fog, the dark place. Still working on it, but
the one thing I do want to say for everyone out there is it is about the people that you're around. Because one of the things I noticed in some of the mom groups I went to is like, became a complaint fest. And you get to the table and you're just like, everyone's complaining, their kids, their spouse, whatever it is. And I'm sitting there going, I don't feel like I have anything I want to complain about, but I'm almost looking in my head for those complaints so I can add something to the conversation. And so it really is about the people you choose to hang around with that really do shape who you are. And so part of that is the more you start to open up and figure out what you enjoy doing, then you start to track those people into your place. And just like you were saying, introducing me to someone else, it just becomes this great web of goodness that we can share with each other, because we're now changing our frequency and the energy with this. But it's recognizing who do you. Again, proximity, 5 people that you're around really change and shape who you are. And so it's important to filter that, to filter what you're watching, what you're doing, how you start your day. Are you starting your day with the news? Because honestly, it's not, it's good to know what's going on. And I admit I'm probably not the best at knowing what's going on purpose. But there's only so much we can do. And they put so much in front of us to sell, to make us feel a certain way. But you get to choose that filter, and you get to choose those boundaries if you take that option. And so I implore you just to consider that, and to consider who you're around and what kind of energy do you want to ensue on that. 'Cause I tell you, when I was living in the fog, I felt like really negative energy putting onto my kids. And even when they put their negative energy on me, I'm able to bounce it back quicker than I would have before. I would have like soaked that in, and then it would just be like this whole, and there are days that it feels like that still. It turns quicker than it used to. And I can feel it, and I can even feel even in the way they talk and the way they do things. I mean, after, what I didn't mention yesterday was after the incident at school, I had to take the girls to swim, and my son was walking home, and he saw me, and I just didn't even acknowledge him. I was mad. And so he sent me a 4-minute long video taking accountability for some of his actions.
Wow.
In that, in what had happened. And so I think the more we do those things, regardless, it starts to show on them. I mean, we're not perfect. And I tell them, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to have the goal of trying to respond to others who annoy you rather than react. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And they're not going to always do it. You're not going to always do it. We're human. But if you're at least trying to have that as your goal, that's all I'm asking. That is my expectation. Like, it's treat people with respect. And I'm not asking you to have best friends. I'm asking you to be civil to your classmates.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Just be civil, please.
Just be
just
civil.
be kind.
And be, yeah. And it was just the way you approach things. And when they talked to it, we were trying to find proactive strategies, and then he was just stonewalling us. He had nothing to do with this conversation, as he just thought we were against him. I'm like, I can't come up with strategies. I can come give you a list of things, and if you don't want to do them, or they're not able to do it in the classroom, I can't do anything. So it's when we talk as a group that we can brainstorm ideas to help you. What are some proactive strategies that when you're angry is something you can do in the classroom? I can't do that by myself because I don't know the classroom. I don't know what they're willing to do or allow. And I don't know what you're willing to want to do or so it's like, but if we have 3 brains together trying to come up with solutions, that's a lot better than one person who doesn't know all the ins and outs. And so that did, but I was very surprised about the video that he sent. And so it just goes to show the more we do these things, it's sinking in.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also a tough age too. I would never, like you said, you taught high school. You could not pay me enough to teach high school or middle school. No, thank you. I was elementary school all the way. Can't deal with that level of hormones and whatnot. So props to you. Not looking forward to the preteen and teen stages with both of my children. But a couple of things that you said stuck with me a little bit. I wanted to mention, like, you said, like, some of the groups you were going to, like, people were just, like, complaining. I feel like there is space for that, and that we have to allow ourselves space for that, but that can't become everything. Like, it's not productive to go to a group every week and just complain.
Well, there's a difference in acknowledging your struggles and just complaining in them.
Yes, that was what I was going to say next. Like, it is okay to struggle. It's okay to not feel happy. It's okay to be confused about your new role as a parent. It's okay. All of those things are normal and okay. But like you were saying, it's work. It takes work to be intentional about how you are filling your time and who you are surrounding yourself with. So yes, it's okay to feel all of those things, but you have to work hard to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who are supportive of you and that you are partaking in things that fill your cup and bring you joy.
Well, I love how Brene Brown says it best. She was explaining on a podcast or something. She's like, just hold your hands together and you have a little flame in there. I think she uses to describe to her kids. And when the wind's blowing, who's going to help protect that flame? Those are the people that you want around you. And you want to make sure, though, that for those that aren't going to, that you're going to protect that flame from them. And you're just really looking for those people to be around you. And it's a good metaphor for the kids as well, because as I was talking to my son, I'm like, I'm not asking you to be best friends with these people. I'm asking you not to poke further when they start something. There's a big difference.
Don't poke the bear.
Like there's a big difference between those things. And the same thing with the complaining, as you were saying, is like, yes, there's one thing with acknowledging where we're at and acknowledging that it's a struggle and we need help with it versus just week after week saying the same thing over and over and complaining in it. And so that's the difference. And yes, we're still going to feel these things, and yes, we have to work through them. But are we working through them, or are we just circling living in them? Mm-hmm. And that's the big difference, is you want to find people who are going to help you acknowledge the struggles and find your way through it. Because it's not always, and again, beware that people are always just going to give you advice as well. Because my biggest thing is, let's listen to each other and keep your mouth shut and let them talk it through. But you're their sounding board. And you're the one who's there, especially with your kids. When my daughters are struggling with the friends and stuff, it's like I'm pursing my lips so far. Like, I want to call her mom. I want to do these things, but I can't do that. I have to ask, what does she want me to do? And let her finish. Because a lot of times we cut them off and we're like, oh, well, you need to do this or you should do this. And they need to start figuring these things out for themselves, knowing that you're someone they can come talk to be that sounding board for them, and that you're just going to support them in it. And so I'm just sitting there, and then at the end, when I feel that she's actually done, then I'm like, well, do you want me to call the parent? Do you want me to do this? Did you just want me to listen? What did you want? Because she's now 10. It's at the point where she's going to be on her own in 7 years. I mean, like years that like, this is the time now where we start that process of letting them do it for themselves, but we're there as their support. We're not there to tell them what to do. We're there to help guide. And the more we do that, the more they're willing to be open with us, and the more we will be able to guide them. Versus them shutting us up because they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to go talk to her. She's going to tell me what to do.
Yeah. I feel like my 8-year-old might be there right now, but it's a hard line to walk, especially because she's my oldest. So she's the guinea pig. So it's a hard line to walk. It's figuring out how much guidance do I give and how much do I just let her figure out on her own. We'll figure it out. Everybody does.
Well, the biggest thing I think is just always asking the questions and just being curious and letting them talk. Yeah. And then take it from there, just then making a decision like, do I need to do something or am I just here to listen? Yeah. And I think, but the more we give them the space to talk, I'm really trying to foster that right now because I'm very deathly afraid of the teenage years of them shutting me out. But I'm like, if I try to be as open as possible as I can right now, and there's been times like, I really want to go talk to this parent. I really want to do this. And I've refrained from doing that because she's like, I'm going to handle this. And then I'd rather her keep telling me the continuation of the story rather than me shutting it down by talking to the parent.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. What I really like about how our conversation has kind of evolved is like when we started and talking about like your early days in parenthood, it sort of felt like the ball was not in your court. It was like someone else had the ball and you were just kind of tracking, not like I'm picturing basketball and you're just kind of watching it all like, okay, I can do this and I can help with this and I could do that. But now you've sort of come into this like comfort and stability and like confidence in your role as a parent, in your role as an entrepreneur, in your role just as a person. And it literally, by like the tone and pacing of your voice through the episode, has changed in how, based on what we're talking about, and it's kind of beautiful to me.
It's true. It's funny.
Right? So it's, I don't know. Again, I try so hard to like hit this point home with my listeners is like, what you're feeling right now is not forever. What you're feeling is not forever. And regardless of what your birth experience was, regardless of what your 4th trimester experience was, it's not forever. Nothing's permanent. And I say that with the full caveat that I am still learning that and I am still accepting that. I'm not telling it to you because I am an expert or I am the master. I am neither of those things. But in getting to meet people like you and getting to meet other people who are further along in the journey and witnessing sort of that evolution in hearing your story, it gives me hope. And I hope it gives my listeners hope as well, too, that you will find yourself, you will find your joy, you will find things to be passionate about. And none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect parents.
I think expert is like a weird word in terms of like that there's some kind of like perfection or expert thing that we need to get to.
Yeah.
It's really that just someone's done that for a little bit longer than you.
Yeah.
And you have the capacity if that is something and I love the idea of like you keep thinking, oh, you want this person's life or what. What you really want to do is look at where they went and are you willing to do all those things that that person actually did? Because we always see the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the book, I love the books on failure and things, and you look at the deep stuff of what a person actually went through to get to where they're at. Is that something you want to do? Are you willing to do that? And that's what we're looking at. But it's also that it's not. It starts with one decision. Like I am going to start acknowledging where I'm doing things. I'm going to start being more curious about what do I actually enjoy doing, and what am I stopping myself from doing? I mean, is it the TV for me or the Candy Crush? What is inhibiting me from doing those things? It's asking those, seems like simple questions, but when you actually ask them, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so then it's just sitting with them and willing to start down that process and seeing where that leads you. Because when we start comparing, the only person you should ever compare yourself is to who you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. No one else. Because your journey is no one but yours.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've come a little bit further from where you were yesterday? Are you a little bit more at peace, more at calm to where you want to be, to the life you want? Not what everyone else has. We're looking at where you're at. Are you asking yourself the questions? Or are you just letting yourself let life happen to you? Yeah. That's the question. And when you let life happen to you, then you really have no reason to complain if you're not putting any effort into designing it.
It's true. It's hard work. It's hard work. Life is hard work. And so I don't think anybody realizes that more than a parent. And
I don't know. I don't even know if I want to put hard work. It's intentional work.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It's intentional work. It can be hard work, but it is intentional work. You have to be intentional and you have to be purposeful in the choices that you're making.
And so you have to look at it from that point of view. It's like, if you're just going to get wrapped up in the busyness and everything, then that's what's going to happen. That's how your life is going to go forward. But when you start putting intention and design and just thought behind where you want your life to go, it starts to change into that direction. And taking that moment to stop and think is just something that's what we should be teaching our kids in school. And that's not what's being taught. It's like, let me get the right answers for this problem. And so we've just never been taught that. And so it's really, are you willing to do that? Are you willing just to take pause? And as we're thinking we need to be so busy that taking the pause is the hard part. Is just like, I need to keep going, go, 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 go. But where are you going? Where do you want to go? And when we can answer those questions, then we got something to talk about.
Yeah. It's awesome because the things that you're saying are things that I need to hear right now. Like it's the universe and that weird, just like timing thing. Because I am caught in a loop right now of go, 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 and this needs to get done and that needs to get done. And I need to do this for the kids and I need to do this for the podcast and I need to do this for the support group. And it's like, what do you actually need to do? And what do you want to do? And what is going to best serve you? So there are messages that I need to hear for sure.
And the one thing I want to say about connection is, as you were talking about the universe stuff, and so we were put in this room together for whatever reason, but it's like being present and knowing you're with the right person at the right time. Because I notice a lot of times we're always looking to who's behind us or who else is in this room or who else is at this party and not present with that person in front of us, whether it's your kid, whether it's a friend, whoever it is in front of you. Is that when we start to give that full attention to whoever's in front of us, just keep in mind the universe put that person in front of you for a reason. Figure out what that reason is.
Yeah.
And let's just connect with each other more. That's going to lead us to more, instead of like FOMO of like what's going on around me.
Yeah.
Enjoy the person that's in front of me. And that's what really brings genuine connection. And that's what this is all about, is how do we connect more with each other in our purpose? And listening to each other and figuring out, you were put in front of me for a reason today. And we're having this wonderful conversation because of that, because we were willing to put ourselves out there. And that's really what this is all about, is just acknowledging the person that's in front of you and giving them your full undivided attention instead of worrying about FOMO.
Love it. I do. I love it. And again, I said it before, I'll say it again. I love it when my episodes take turns that I wasn't anticipating. Like, I always have my little like my notes of like, this will help us go here. I don't know if you noticed, but I completely stopped looking at them. Like yeah, no, I just I like the genuine sort of connection. We keep saying that word, that comes out of this. It's helpful to me, and I'm hopeful it will be helpful to my listeners. I feel like that kind of brings us full circle, which is really nice. I think we'll leave with this sort of thought. That whole journey we just went on with you, and the fun little side stops and derailments or whatever, what is the one thing you hope my listeners take away from your story?
Well, the one thing that I normally end with is really talking about the connection. But really what it is that we have all these ideas in our head. And I actually probably didn't even mention this in the podcast, but I love to end with this because it really is about those connections. And so 2 things that we always have trouble with is communicating with other people and giving and receiving compliments, right? So one of the things I always say is, you see someone walk by and you like their hat or you like their dress, but that thought just lives in your head. What if you take the step to get that thought out of your head and just share those compliments with other people? And it's so hard at times for us to receive compliments as it is sometimes to even give them. And so it really is about that practice of changing your energy. And so from my experience from doing it, you get smiles. I actually did make a really good friend who I ended up a mom getting on the bus and stuff. So my neighbor and I, she actually just got a job, but we were walking every day. And so you never know where that connection is going to lead, but the more that we get out there to go past our comfort zone, because we've lived in our little boxes and our little houses for so long. Moms used to be on the riverside washing clothes together. Mm-hmm. We don't do that anymore. We're in our own little spaces. So how do we get past it is by taking those little steps of connection. And it's just one thing at a time, but what it does is it changes your energy and your openness to receiving more. And we suck at receiving. I know I do.
I do too.
And so when you're giving more compliments, but then when someone gives you the compliment, it's stopping and saying the word thank you first. Mm-hmm. Instead of just saying, oh, well, I didn't really do that. Oh, right. Well, I should have added this.
It's not a big deal. Yeah.
I don't need a compliment for that. Like, those are the 2 big things, is just starting to get those compliments out of your head. But when you get one, is just responding thank you with. And if you want to qualify it afterwards, fine. But receive the energy you just got for that compliment, because we are energetic beings. And so it is really changing the energy. Because when you walk into a room, you know who's in a bad mood, who's in a good mood. Mm-hmm. And you can feel it. And so this helps to change that for you.
Yeah. I like that. I say that a lot. I like that. But I do.
Nice and simple.
It is. It's simple. It's like one of my catchphrases. I like that. I love that. I just really appreciate you coming on. And I've loved being able to experience the evolution of your story. And I feel like I got to steal's not the right word. I received a little bit of your joy. I'm feeling a little lighter than I did before I started. So
you're going to have a new rhythm now.
Yes, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to try to get rid of the word balance and start using the word
I've been trying
rhythm.
to work on the words busy, and even though like my freebie says 10 busy mom, like for busy mamas, but I'm trying to rework that wording, and I'm still not sure on where that's going, but that's my goal, is like, how do we redefine that, and how do we actually have genuine responses instead of I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or just instead of just blah everything out. Like, there's got to be something in between that's still genuine. So those are some of the things that I'm still trying to figure out. But the rhythm part, I think, with the balance, because I was like, well, you gotta have a balanced life. I'm like, there's always equal pressures if there's a balance.
Yeah. And it's not black and white. It's not either or, and it's not, I like rhythm and dance, and that makes sense in my brain, so I like it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm excited for my listeners to take advantage of your offer. I will also include it in the show notes.
Awesome.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for joining me on the podcast and for sharing all of your insights into how we can connect with other moms and create a community. I especially loved your analogy to life being a rhythm that we learn to dance to rather than a balance. If you want to follow along with us on Quiet Connection, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Quiet Connection or at Quiet Connection Podcast. You can support our community by writing a review on your favorite podcast platform or by sharing our episodes on social media. You could also consider becoming a Patreon member and gain access to things like bonus content, ad-free listening, and goodies in the mail once a month. If you'd like to share your personal journey, you can reach us through our website, quietconnectionpodcast.com, or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.